Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. As they finished their meal and walked hand in hand through the city streets, Adele felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that there would always be challenges ahead, that the world wasn't always kind to people like her, but she also knew that she had the strength to face whatever came her way. She had found her true self, her purpose, and a love that accepted her completely. And in doing so, she had become living proof that it was possible to overcome even the darkest of beginnings and create a life filled with light, love, and meaning. As the years passed, Adele's influence in her field continued to grow. She published a groundbreaking book on gender identity and mental health, drawing on both her professional expertise and personal experiences. The book became a bestseller, praised for its honest, compassionate approach to a complex and often misunderstood topic. With her increased visibility came new opportunities and challenges. Adele found herself in demand as a speaker, not just at academic conferences, but on talk shows and podcasts. She approached each opportunity with careful consideration, always mindful of using her platform to educate and advocate for those who didn't have a voice. But even as her professional success grew, Adele never lost sight of what was truly important. Her relationship with Olivia deepened, their love a steady anchor in the sometimes turbulent waters of public life. They supported each other's careers, celebrated each other's successes, and provided comfort during inevitable setbacks. It was Olivia who first broached the subject of starting a family. "Have you ever thought about having children?" she asked one quiet evening as they sat on their balcony, watching the sunset. Adele's heart skipped a beat. The idea of parenthood was something she had never allowed herself to consider, haunted as she was by her own difficult childhood. I don't know," she admitted. "I'm not sure I'd be any good at it." Olivia's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "I think you'd be an amazing mother. You have so much love to give, Adele. And think of all the wisdom you could pass on." The conversation planted a seed, and over the next few months, Adele found herself seriously considering the possibility. She and Olivia had long discussions about adoption, surrogacy, and what kind of parents they wanted to be. In the end, they decided to adopt, feeling a strong pull towards providing a loving home for a child who needed one. The process was long and sometimes frustrating, but Adele and Olivia supported each other through every step. The day they brought home their daughter, Mia, was one of the happiest of Adele's life. As she held the tiny, wide-eyed baby in her arms, she felt a love so fierce and protective it took her breath away. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome home." Parenthood brought a whole new set of challenges and joys. Adele found herself drawing on all her professional knowledge and personal experiences as she navigated the ups and downs of raising a child. She was determined to create the stable, loving environment she had longed for in her own childhood. As Mia grew, Adele and Olivia were open with her about their family's unique story. They answered her questions honestly and age-appropriately, always emphasizing the importance of love, acceptance, and being true to oneself. One evening, as Adele tucked a 7-year-old Mia into bed, the little girl asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mommy, were you always a girl?" Adele paused, considering her words carefully. "No, sweetheart. When I was born, people thought I was a boy. But as I grew up, I realized that wasn't who I really was inside." Mia's brow furrowed in concentration. "So you changed to be who you really are?" Adele nodded, her heart swelling with love for her perceptive daughter. "That's right. It wasn't easy, but it was important for me to be true to myself." Mia was quiet for a moment, then she reached up and wrapped her arms around Adele's neck. "I'm glad you did, Mommy. I like you, just the way you are." Tears pricked at Adele's eyes as she hugged her daughter close. In that moment, she felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. The scared, angry young man she had once been seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the woman she had always been meant to be, successful, loved, and now a mother herself. As Mia drifted off to sleep, Adele quietly left the room, finding Olivia waiting for her in the hallway. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, noticing the emotion on Adele's face. Adele nodded, pulling her wife into a tight embrace. "Everything's perfect," she whispered. I never thought I could have this. A career I love, a partner who understands me, a child who accepts me completely. Sometimes it feels like a dream." Olivia pulled back, cupping Adele's face in her hands. "It's not a dream, love. You've worked so hard for all of this. You deserve every bit of happiness." As they stood there in the dim light of the hallway, Adele felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. For Professor Bourne, who had helped her take those first crucial steps towards self-discovery. For Olivia, whose love and support had given her the courage to dream of a future she never thought possible. For Mia, whose innocence and acceptance reminded her every day of the power of unconditional love. But most of all, she felt grateful to herself, to the frightened, confused young person she had once been, who had found the strength to embark on this journey of self-discovery and transformation. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments of doubt and fear along the way. But standing here now, surrounded by love and purpose, Adele knew that every struggle had been worth it. As she and Olivia retired to their bedroom, Adele's mind drifted to the future. She thought about the work she still wanted to do, the lives she hoped to touch. She thought about watching Mia grow up, about the kind of world she wanted to help create for her daughter, and she realized that her journey was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now, she faced the future not with fear or anger, but with hope, love, and an unshakable belief in the power of being true to oneself. As she drifted off to sleep, Adele's last thought was one of peace and contentment. She had found her place in the world, her true self, and a family to call her own. And in doing so, she had become living proof that it was possible to overcome even the darkest of beginnings and create a life filled with light, love, and meaning. The years continued to pass, bringing with them new challenges and triumphs. Adele's career continued to flourish, her work touching countless lives. She expanded her practice to include online therapy sessions, reaching out to individuals in remote areas who might not otherwise have access to supportive mental health care. Olivia's research gained international recognition, leading to breakthroughs in understanding the neurological basis of gender identity. Together, they became a powerhouse couple in their respective fields, often collaborating on projects that bridged the gap between neuroscience and psychology. Mia grew into a compassionate, curious teenager, her mother's openness and acceptance shaping her into a fierce advocate for equality and social justice. Adele watched with pride as her daughter organized awareness events at her high school, standing up for classmates who were struggling with their own identities. But life wasn't without its difficulties. As Adele's profile rose, she occasionally faced backlash from conservative groups who disagreed with her work and her very existence. There were times when the negativity felt overwhelming, when she questioned whether the fight was worth it. During one particularly challenging period, after a series of threatening emails and a confrontational interview on a national news program, Adele found herself spiraling into doubt and fear. It was Mia who pulled her out of it, coming to her one evening with determination in her eyes. "Mom," she said, her voice steady, "I need you to know something. What you do, who you are, it matters. It's changing lives. I see it every day at school. Kids who are finally finding the courage to be themselves because of people like you." Adele felt tears welling up in her eyes as Mia continued. "You taught me that being true to yourself is the most important thing, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So don't let them win, okay? The world needs you." In that moment, Adele was struck by the realization that her journey had come full circle. She had become the kind of role model and support she had so desperately needed in her youth, and in doing so, she had raised a daughter who understood the importance of that work on a fundamental level. Reinvigorated by Mia's words, Adele threw herself back into her work with renewed passion. She started a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing resources and support for transgender youth, particularly those in underserved communities. The organization grew rapidly, fueled by Adele's dedication and the growing awareness of transgender issues in society. As Mia prepared to leave for college, Adele found herself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past 2 decades. From a lost and angry young man to a successful, fulfilled woman with a loving family and a meaningful career. It was a transformation she never could have imagined. The day they dropped Mia off at her dorm, Adele felt a bittersweet mix of pride and sadness. As they helped her unpack, Adele noticed a framed photo on Mia's desk. It was a picture of the 3 of them, Adele, Olivia, and Mia, laughing together at a family picnic. "I wanted to have a piece of home with me," Mia explained, catching Adele's gaze. Adele pulled her daughter into a tight hug, overcome with emotion. "We're always with you, sweetheart, no matter where you go or what you do." As they said their goodbyes, Mia pulled Adele aside for one last private moment. "Mom," she said, her voice thick with emotion.
"I want you to know how proud I am to be your daughter. You've taught me so much about courage and authenticity. I hope I can make half the difference in the world that you have." Adele cupped her daughter's face, her heart overflowing with love. "You already have, Mia, just by being your beautiful, compassionate self. The world is lucky to have you." The drive home was quiet, both Adele and Olivia lost in their thoughts. As they entered their now empty house, Adele felt a momentary pang of sadness, but as she looked at Olivia, she was filled with a sense of excitement for this new chapter in their lives. "What do you think comes next for us?" Olivia asked, seeming to read Adele's thoughts. Adele smiled, taking her wife's hand. "I'm not sure, but I know it'll be an adventure. We've still got so much to do, so many lives to touch."
As they settled into their new routine, Adele found herself busier than ever. She continued her clinical work and advocacy, but also began writing her memoirs, hoping to reach even more people with her story of transformation and hope. One day, as she sat at her desk working on a particularly challenging chapter, Adele received an unexpected email. It was from a former client, a young transgender man she had counseled years ago. He wrote to tell her that he had just completed his medical transition and was living happily as his true self. He credited Adele's support and guidance as a crucial factor in his journey. As she read his words of gratitude, Adele felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She thought back to that scared, angry young man she had once been, sitting in Professor Bourne's office, unable to imagine a future where he could be happy and whole. She thought of all the people who had supported her along the way, Professor Bourne, Olivia, Mia, and countless others who had believed in her even when she couldn't believe in herself, and she realized that her life had become a testament to the power of authenticity, of living one's truth despite the obstacles. She had not only saved herself, but had become a beacon of hope for others walking a similar path. As Adele continued to work on her memoirs, she found herself delving deeper into memories she had long buried. The process was both cathartic and challenging, forcing her to confront the pain of her past while celebrating how far she had come. One evening, as she sat at her desk, poring over old journals from her early transition days, Olivia knocked gently on the study door. "How's it going in here?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. "You've been at it for hours." Adele looked up, her eyes slightly unfocused from staring at the computer screen for so long. "It's intense," she admitted, rubbing her temples. "I'm writing about the first time I went out in public presenting as a woman. I'd forgotten how terrifying it was." Olivia crossed the room, resting her hands on Adele's shoulders and kneading gently. "Do you want to talk about it?" Adele leaned back into her wife's touch, closing her eyes for a moment. "I remember standing in front of the mirror for what felt like hours,
second-guessing everything. My clothes, my makeup, my voice. I was convinced everyone would see right through me, that I'd be laughed at or worse." "But you did it anyway," Olivia murmured, pride evident in her voice. "I did," Adele nodded. "I walked to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my cup. But then—" She trailed off, lost in the memory. Olivia waited patiently, her hands still working out the knots in Adele's shoulders. "The barista called out my order. 'Latte for Adele.' And when I went to pick it up, she smiled at me and said, 'Have a great day, ma'am.' It was such a small thing, but in that moment, it meant everything." Olivia leaned down to the top of Adele's head. "Those small moments of validation can be so powerful." Adele nodded, reaching up to squeeze one of Olivia's hands. "They really are. I'm realizing as I write this how many of those moments there were. Little victories that kept me going when things got tough. I'm proud of you for doing this," Olivia said. "I know it can't be easy reliving all of that." "It's not," Adele admitted. "But I think it's important, not just for me, but for anyone who might read this and see themselves in my story." Olivia moved around to perch on the edge of the desk, facing Adele. "You know, I was thinking, maybe we could reach out to some of the people who were there for you during your transition. See if they'd be willing to contribute their perspectives to the book." Adele's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "That's a brilliant idea. I'd love to include Professor Bourne's voice if he's willing, and maybe some of my early support group friends." "What about your foster parents?" Olivia asked gently, knowing this was a sensitive topic. Adele's expression clouded slightly. I don't know. Some of them were supportive, others not so much." "It might be healing to reconnect with the supportive ones," Olivia suggested. "And including their perspectives could add depth to your story." Adele nodded slowly, considering the idea. "You're right. It's scary, but I think it could be valuable, both for the book and for me personally." Olivia smiled, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind Adele's ear. "You don't have to decide right now. Why don't you take a break? I've got dinner almost ready." Adele saved her work and stood up, stretching out the kinks in her back. As they walked to the kitchen together, she felt a surge of gratitude for Olivia's unwavering support. Over dinner, they continued to discuss the book project. Adele found herself growing more excited as they brainstormed ideas for additional content and potential readers. "You know," Adele said, twirling pasta around her fork, "I never thought I'd be doing something like this, writing a book, sharing my story so openly." "Life has a way of surprising us," Olivia replied with a smile. "But I always knew you had important things to say. Your voice matters, Adele." As they cleared the table and settled onto the couch for their nightly ritual of catching up on their favorite shows, Adele felt a renewed sense of purpose. She cuddled into Olivia's side, her mind already racing with plans for the next chapter of her book. The following week, Adele decided to take Olivia's advice and reach out to some of the people who had been instrumental in her transition journey. She started with an email to Professor Bourne, her hands shaking slightly as she hit send. To her surprise and delight, Bourne responded within hours, expressing enthusiasm for the project and agreeing to meet for an interview. As Adele read his warm words, she felt a rush of emotion, remembering the scared young person she had been when she first stepped into his office all those years ago. Encouraged by this positive response, Adele began reaching out to others. She connected with old friends from support groups, colleagues who had supported her early in her career, and even a few of her more understanding foster parents. Each conversation brought new insights and perspectives to her story. Some were joyful reunions full of laughter and shared memories. Others were more challenging, dredging up old hurts and misunderstandings that needed to be addressed. One particularly difficult call was with her former foster mother, Mrs. Thornton. The elderly woman had struggled to understand Adele's transition at first, but had eventually come around to being one of her strongest supporters. "Adele, my dear," Mrs. Thornton's voice crackled over the phone. "I can't tell you how happy I am to hear from you. And a book! How wonderful!" Adele felt tears pricking at her eyes as she listened to the familiar voice. "Thank you, Mrs. Thornton.
Your support meant so much to me during that time." There was a pause, and when Mrs. Thornton spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. I hope you can forgive an old woman for being slow to understand at first. I've always regretted not embracing who you were right from the start." "Oh, Mrs. Thornton," Adele said softly, "there's nothing to forgive. You came around when it mattered most. You were there for me when so many others weren't." As they continued to talk, sharing memories and catching up on each other's lives, Adele felt a weight she hadn't even realized she was carrying begin to lift. By the end of the call, they had made plans for Mrs. Thornton to visit in person to do a proper interview for the book. That night, as Adele recounted the day's conversations to Olivia, she felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "It's amazing," she mused, "how revisiting the past can change your perspective on the present." Olivia nodded, pulling Adele close. "You're not just writing a book, love. You're healing old wounds and building bridges. It's beautiful to watch." As Adele drifted off to sleep that night, her mind was filled with the voices of her past, each one a thread in the tapestry of her journey. She knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but she felt more prepared than ever to face them, armed with the strength of her experiences and the love of those who had supported her along the way. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.